Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Vibe It Up podcast. I'm your host, Dan Tudorache, and I have here with me um, Jethro Sloan. Did I spell that correctly?
Yeah,
Oh,
Jethro, that's correct. Yeah.
yes, Jethro, because I called you David in a message. I put it, and he said, Jethro, it's okay. Nice meeting you, Jethro. Welcome. Near me and beside me in this community podcast. It's a podcast where we explore the human side of people in tech, or the human side of IT professional, right? And I know you are working in the tech industry, software development industry, and I want to give me just a brief overview of your, I don't know, current role and responsibilities in the software development industry as you have now.
Yeah, great. Hey, thanks for having me. It's, looking forward to being on the show. Yeah, my current role that I work in right now, I work for a consultancy. So I'm consulting at a major bank in the Netherlands as a tech lead. So my role is around leading a team of about 6 or 7 engineers delivering software in the trade risk management department. So we're delivering trade risk procedures as Python backend code hosted in certain platforms. And my role is to make sure we implement the correct design patterns and make sure that we produce software that's long living and well maintained.
Okay, okay. So you have just this role now, or do you have other side gigs, or what do you do?
Yeah, so I have my own show that talks about leadership. So I have a side gig where it's called Lead Community.
Wow.
We discuss leadership in tech, mainly targeting management, but also future leaders, and try and share our experiences and discuss different scenarios you'll find as a leader or as an aspiring leader within the tech space. And then at the
Mhm.
consultancy, I also have a role of a people manager or a team lead or whatever you want to call that. But I help and mentor about 4 or 5 consultants that work at the various clients, and I'm kind of a touch point for them to work on and help them grow in the consultancy space.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. There's a nice career path that I can see that you follow. So, could you share a bit about your background and journey in the tech world, leading up to your current position?
Yeah, sure. So I currently I live in the Netherlands, but I am originally
Mhm.
from South Africa. Maybe people could hear my accents and identify that, but I'm from South Africa originally. I started in tech. Yeah, maybe my accent has evolved a little bit more since I've been in the Netherlands for 5 years now, so maybe a bit more of an international accent. But so my journey in tech started a long time ago. Pretty much my whole life, I think I've been involved around the tech space. When I was a kid, I was taking apart computers and putting them back together. For instance, playing a lot of online video games and landing with my friends. So it started all the way back then, I would say. And then I went to university for software engineering, and I got a degree in software engineering. That was about 10 or 12 years ago. And then since then, I've been working as a software engineer mainly. The last 8 years of that was probably working as a software engineer, working in different organizations. I was a consultant as well in that time space in South Africa. I worked at a consultancy. Yeah, my roles, I've touched pretty much every programming language that there is almost. I've worked in different spaces and had many different experiences along the way. I think that's what's helped me a lot, taking a step up into the tech lead role, which I currently fulfill now. Yeah, and over the years, it's been an interesting journey. As you say, I had an interesting or a well designed career path. I like to think so, although it didn't happen by plan. I think it just kind of happened that way naturally, and I'm happy it did. I think I'm in a place where I'm really happy with the work that I'm doing, and I feel like I have meaning in the work that I do, and I think that's very valuable.
Wow, wow. Yes, that sounds very good. So having that mission and the sense of belonging and having a scope, a bigger scope than just going to work and getting money. It's awesome in terms of motivation and everything on our mindset. Okay, so reflecting on your early career, what were some key roles or projects that, I don't know, significantly influenced your professional growth?
For me, I've always really been involved a lot in digital transformation. So I was working at a yellow pages company or a indexing, yeah, book indexing company that was working with old telephone books. That was their model, and they wanted to move away from that. So it really was a legacy model that we no longer use. I mean, no one has a phone book anymore, right? We all used to have one, but no one has one anymore. And it was a very interesting experience for me to see how a company that was so dominant and profitable in that space, and then all of a sudden it was like the lights were turned off and they had to pivot. So that kind of chaos that they had to unpack where they wanted to go, what their new vision was. I think that that was really transformative for me in my approach. I liked the idea that tech could be this powerful tool that businesses or anyone, even just normal people, can use to really improve and transform their life. And I think for me, that was the biggest in my mind, made me feel like this is really what I want to do, and this is how I feel I can affect the world in a way that I would like to. So I think when I was younger, I looked and thought, how can I make a difference? And I think yeah, tech can sometimes not really be there, but I think in my eyes, I see it as a real powerful tool to help people. And that was one of the moments where I was like, this is really what I want to do. And I'm willing to make this my full time career.
I see. I see. It looked like you had this passion. I don't know. Since when did you feel like, okay, I want to go in tech, and this is everything that I want to to do?
Well, that's actually a very funny story because my family moved to Australia when I was just finishing high school, and I actually got
Mhm.
into a university in Australia, Charles Darwin University, for chemical engineering because I was playing, I was involved in tech in my personal life, but from a professional standpoint in South Africa specifically, parents were very pushy when it came to you should do something in engineering, so I chose a very traditional engineering role like
Mhm.
chemical engineering. And if it wasn't for me leaving Australia early and not going to university, then going back to South Africa, that was kind of the moment where I had to pivot because when I went back to South Africa, they were halfway through the semester, so I couldn't join a normal university. So I had to go to a technical college, for instance, and I ended up doing programming there because I was like, well, I'm good at computers. It's something to do until the new semester. If I don't like it, I can always switch to chemical engineering. It's not the end of the world. And I realized actually, hey, this is something that I really enjoy doing. Programming was something that really made me feel, yeah, a lot of the time put on music and you could just code for hours, and I just felt like I could lose myself in that moment, and that felt like a really interesting way for me to go. But it wasn't until I started working and until I had that moment. Working for the transformation a company that wanted to work in transformation, that was really the moment where I was like, this is the career that I want to pursue because this will give me a lot of meaning and I have a lot of passion towards it.
Did you first thought about, I don't know, having a lot of money, or thinking about what the companies in tech pay, or going into the financial part, or just going, okay, I'm curious what's in here and I want to learn more?
Yeah, for me, I never really looked at any career as a monetary. I mean, all of us have to work and we all have to make money. I think that that's something that we
Obviously.
don't need. That's life, right? You need to make money. So I don't want to disregard that, but it's not one of the main factors that I looked at when I was looking at a career. I wanted to do something. You spend most of your life, at least 8 hours a day of a waking. So that's at least half your day every single day. So half your life you will be spent basically working. And I think in that way, I wanted to find something that I enjoyed doing, and that there was always that saying that said, "Find something that you enjoy doing or love doing, and you'll never work another day in your life." Although I don't necessarily believe in that in a dogmatic way. I think in a more pragmatic way. If you find something that you enjoy 60, 70% of the time, then I think you already found a good place. So that was for me was the main factor in the career that I chose. It was more about what do I enjoy doing and how when if I work so when I first started programming at university, I was like, could I see myself doing this for 8 hours every single day? And at that moment my answer was yes. And I really thought that that was the key factor for me choosing it as a career. It wasn't based on money. I didn't even look at what the salaries were for tech. I knew that tech was hot. Obviously, it's been an upward trajectory up until actually last year. My entire career has been an upward trajectory in terms of tech. We obviously hit a bit of a dip last year, but it was never really a factor for me in my mind. I didn't think about the money. No.
Yeah, not awesome, because a lot of people are now thinking, okay, I'm going in tech and learn a lot of money, six figures or so, and it's not always the happening. This maybe they can't adapt, or get to work in tech because they don't have the knowledge, but it's always the curiosity and the passion for this domain. Can you recall a specific challenge or obstacle you faced early in your career, and how you it shaped your approach to this problem solving skill? Because as a programmer, software developers, we need that problem solving to be very well accentuated.
Yeah, so I think for me as a person, I've always had I would annoy a lot of people because they would give me their problems, and my first thought is to always find a solution for them. So a chat for me, number one, my main motivator in life is normally a challenge. So if something's difficult, I get more motivated to try and solve it. So I think that already kind of plays into the problem solving aspect. I already get motivated by challenges, and the harder the challenge. And the more at stake at the challenge, the more I'm motivated to try and achieve that. So I think that is a personality trait already played really well. Into into problem solving. And then yeah, all the playing video games when I was younger, for instance, and LANing. I was the one that had to set up the whole LAN network, for instance. That was a challenge, and I solved that. And I got real joy out of being able to provide that for my friends whenever I hosted a LAN, for instance. So I think in that way, it was already something that I was really motivated by. And actually, if you look at chemistry and what I was looking at as a normal subject, all the things that I really enjoyed was like investigative. So trying to find out what the element was inside of the mixture of elements, for instance. So for me, that kind of feels again like problem solving. You have a problem, you have this big bunch of chemicals all together, and you need to use some tests to find out what the element was. So that kind of investigation already drove me. Yeah, and I think the first real tech experience that I have in terms of that was the first time you fail. I can't remember exactly the moment, but it was the time when I left university and I started my first job, and I thought I was hot shots. I just left university, everything's going good, and then you get to your first real problem, and you fail, and you think to yourself, "Wow, maybe I'm not that good." But maybe that's the point. Maybe you shouldn't be. No one leaves university. I think the gap between work and university is quite different anyway. And I think that moment of realization that maybe I'm not so great was a really motivating factor for me. It's like, wow, I have a lot of challenges that I need to face, and I need to figure out how to face those. And that was the moment where I was like, this is really interesting for me, and this is what I want to do. I love that challenge.
Yeah, we lost a little. Thinking back on those challenging moments, are there, I don't know, specific projects or decisions that played a, I don't know, crucial role on shaping your growth trajectory? Or have you created a plan or growth plan or career plan in early your career, or just after that you thought, okay, I want to be that?
Um, yeah, so I think what happened for me, it was a plan that I had in my head that was kind of simmering under the hood because it wasn't something that I purposely created. But working in consultancy quite early in my career, and I moved around a lot because, like I said, challenges really motivated me. So once I got a little bit bored, or I felt like I was doing the same tasks over and over again, that would be
Mm,
the time for me to say, hey, hold on, I would like to move companies, and that's actually why consultancy works really well for me because I like to change every year or maybe 2 years maximum. So I think that really worked. But what I noticed in the industry was a lot of different challenges around the way they'd implemented software and the challenges that they were facing on a day-to-day basis. And I kind of made mental notes of all those challenges down the road. And for me, when I finally was in a position to be able to make decisions, I then looked back at all those problems that I saw, and I now have, I think, a much broader approach to solving those problems and making sure we don't see the same problems again. Because often what you see is badly implemented architecture, or DevOps not done correctly, or environments unstable. There's tons of things that you can see. Even going further than taking people problems, for instance, right? How teams work together. That's become very interesting to
that's
me recently. It's not for me. Software is generally not the problem, right? Software is a solution. It's the people that write the software that generally cause the problem. Because yeah, Python itself or
indeed.
Java is not a problem. It's a solution that exists, and people need to implement that solution in a certain way, and that's where the problem comes in. So that became my mind switch. That was when I moved to the Netherlands, and I joined consultancy again. I started to realize that the software is not the problem; it's the people, and that's where I really started to put my attention to and focus on, because I already had a lot of experience moving from company to company, seeing the same trends over and over again, and that helped me to say, hey, I really want to be a person who can make a difference and make sure companies don't have those problems again. So that's what really drove me to want to go to into tech lead or tech or any or leadership inside of tech, because I feel like I have the right tools to be able to steer companies in the right way.
Right, right. It's a conclusion I came to after almost 15 years of experience in the same domain, and I've seen, okay, we can do a lot of things with tech, with programming languages, with tools, but working with people, it's a little harder, and that's why I went and go and get skills on that part. And I even made a psychology university to get skills on leadership and on human nature part.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. It's there's the challenges, and I want to address that also in the podcast and also in my other speeches, that we need to take care of our skills, of our mindset, of our approach on how we do things and collaborate better, rather than everyone invited to invent something on his own all the time, reinvent the wheel. Say, I, I do a better approach. Yes, and
That's one of the things we see a lot, right? Is that someone finds a new interesting design. So microservices is a great example of this. And microservices came along. Netflix was doing it, for instance, or was it Spotify? I can't remember which one was it. Was the first inventor? I think it was Spotify. They created what they called the microservice architecture, and then everyone was like, "Wow, if it works for them, then it's going to work for us." But meanwhile, it was probably not the right idea for almost all the companies to implement that, because they didn't have the same problem and they didn't have the same volume. So yeah, you see this quite often, and I agree with I resonate a lot with what you're saying about moving into studying. My main focus right now actually is behavioral science, because I find that that has a lot of impact in teams, and being able to affect people's behavior is a strong,
yes.
is really powerful tool to have for sure.
Yes, and we will get there. But yes, there are two streams in organizations. So the first one, there is the project management part, which you can always put processes, put rules, put everything that people should do, right? And on the other part are the behaviors and the human skills and what they are really doing, and not what's written on the processes part, because often those processes are not respected. So I don't know, we work in TDD, for example, environment, test driven development. Few people actually write tests before they do writing the code, because yeah, either that they don't want, they don't see the value, and the story could be big from here. And how did you approach this critical decision points? So you've talked about decisions earlier, and in your career, considering your past experiences and lesson learned along the way, how did you approach this critical decision skill?
What do you mean by critical decision skill? Sorry, I'm trying to understand the
uh,
question.
it's more on to think critically on the tasks that you have a bigger picture. I don't know what helped you grow in this part, in the taking better decisions, quicker decisions, more informed decisions.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I noticed about making decisions is a lot of the time everyone operates under assumptions, right? So that's the first key factor for me was to identify that we're working under assumptions. Can we validate those assumptions first, right? So we have everyone thinks this is what we should do, but how do we know that that's based on actual evidence? So can we investigate that further and find out exactly, is this the truth? Is this actually the case? And that was like the first
Yes.
step for me, was not to just accept what people are telling me, but to actually investigate further what they're saying, because that really helps. A lot of the time, one person says something and another person says something, and actually what you find is normally the truth lies somewhere in the middle between the two. So that's generally what I try and do. And in this way, I think that a lot of people also blow up decisions too much. So what they do is they have a decision and they think, wow, I need to be 1 million, 100% sure that this is the right decision that I'm going to make. And a lot of the times you can never be 100%. So what's going to happen is you're
No.
just going to look for this 100% over and over and over again. And eventually you're not going to find it. So what I try to do whenever I'm in a team or at a client, for instance, and they're afraid to make a decision, I normally just take responsibility and say, okay, I'll make the decision. If it goes wrong, I'll take blame for that decision. It's fine. That never really happens, because if you make a decision and it's wrong, you just readjust and make a different decision, and no one really ever blames anyone. But people often are scared to take responsibility for that decision, and I find that there's no real downside to taking responsibility for a decision. Okay, you were wrong. You admit you were wrong, and you make a different decision. And I think that that's what allowed me to make the most quick and powerful decisions, because the more mistakes you make, the more you learn. In my opinion, like, I learn the best from when I make a mistake. So the more decisions I make, the more I get wrong. That means that I'm going to get right in the future, and I like to think about it in that way.
Yeah, yeah, awesome, awesome perspective. I mean, there are a lot of new people in this industry, or even experienced people that are still afraid of taking decisions, right? It means, okay, maybe you overanalyze that thing, or you don't have yet the all the information that you need to proceed with the decision, and you need to research more, but you need to trust more on yourself and on your skills, on your gut, because self trust is a good factor on taking decisions at a point. Okay.
Absolutely. I think one more thing about this point is actually when I moved to the Netherlands, I joined a startup, and in South Africa, there's no real like safety net. For instance, so if you make a mistake, you can almost end up on the street. There's no government to back you up, for instance. So that's kind of you kind of live with that fear of making. It didn't really affect me as badly as I realized until I moved to the Netherlands when I joined a startup where failure in a startup is almost an everyday thing. You try something, it doesn't work, you try again, and I think that safety and failing really allowed me to move past my fear of failure. And I think you have to move
Mhm.
past your fear of failure. That's the main thing. Failure is not bad. It's if you look at anyone who's successful, they have a million steps of failure, and then the final step that they take is success. But everyone only ever focuses on that last little step instead of realizing that the journey was a bunch of failures along the way, and that's critical, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Awesome, awesome detail about the failure part. Right? It's part of us, our learning process. It's not looking as a failure. It's an experience. Yeah, I've messed a lot of time with servers and going down and putting bug in production or something like that. I've learned. Never did that the same error again, right? But if you don't take decisions, if you don't assume that what you have done there will be the best part, but in the whole time taking also safety measures, right, or fail safe algorithms. When you say we will fail, for example, not everything to run down and ruin everything. So there are a lot of mechanisms that you can implement in coding, right, to fail safely. Sure, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that one of the things I learned at the startup was to fail often, and if you're going to fail, make sure it's quick and it's small. And you don't want a big bang failure where you can't deliver at the end of the day. Rather, make small little attempts and keep failing along the way until you get to the big situation. So the big release. So I think that's important. What you said is absolutely true. You need to fail safely, and you need to create the environment for yourself, or your team, or your company needs to create that environment for you. And I think that that's really important.
Yeah, yeah, right. And as you discussed about leadership, and now you have people management positions, and you need to handle teams. Uh, from your point of view, why is the emotional intelligence important in the tech industry, particularly in leadership roles? Right.
Yeah, so I think what I found one of the most important aspects of a team, in my opinion, is psychological safety, right? Because almost nothing in a team can happen. So what we spoke about now, failing safely, that requires a large portion of psychological safety, right? You need to feel like if I make a mistake, it's not going to be the end of my career. I'm not going to be fired. That's definitely not what you want inside your team. So I think that emotional intelligence and that what I like to call psychological safety within the team is identifying how, as a leader, can you create the environment. So I just said it now about failure, is how to create the environment for your team to feel safe enough to speak up about ideas that they have, to challenge ideas, or challenge current processes, or to fail safely, or yeah, just to be themselves in the team. And I think a lot of people have opinions and ideas inside of tech. I think our industry in general is very idea rich, right? Everyone has an idea about something, or as you said earlier, everyone wants to do something their own way, and they have a cool way of doing it, which is lovely, and we should definitely embrace that. However, you also need to come together as a team. And deliver that. So I think the emotional intelligence that you're speaking about here is about recognizing and identifying your team members, but also making sure you guide them into the right way. It's not just like, okay, everyone does whatever they want. If that's what makes them happy, then you're just going to have you don't have a team, right? You have a bunch of individuals just
No.
operating on their own ideas, and you need to steer the decisions to be as the leader. It's your responsibility to make sure the direction you're going in is where you want to go, right? Is it in line with what business wants? Is it in line with delivering value? And I think that that's where you need to draw the line between, okay, you have a good idea, we can't implement this now because of certain factors. We'll come back to this, or we'll, yeah. However, you need to use your emotional intelligence there to make sure that you allow people to be themselves, but also direct the team in a way that's sustainable and successful.
Yeah, obviously. So, could you share an instance for you where the emotional intelligence skill played a key role in, I don't know, resolving a team conflict or addressing a challenging situation at work?
Yeah, so I think for me, one of the biggest situations that I've seen is in a tech team. You normally have the quiet team members who don't speak up that often, and then you normally have the really loud. I actually was one of those really loud people, as you can hear. I can talk quite loud, and I can talk quite a lot. So I have the ability to take over conversations. And once
Mhm.
I taken a step back and looked at myself objectively in those situations. So there was a discussion at work between should we stay with a legacy solution that was written by a developer who'd been in the company for like 10 years or so, and then there was new engineers who also have a lot of experience and were seniors who had some different ideas, right? And this is obviously quite a
Right.
tricky conversation to have, right? Because the senior engineer who's been there for a long time has quite a lot of an emotional attachment to the solution that he's delivered, right? We like to think we don't get emotionally attached to the solutions that we deliver, but a lot of the time, especially if you built something that's made the business successful for the last 10 years, you're going to feel very proud about that and quite defensive because why shouldn't we use that again, right? And this conversation was quite
Yes.
tricky because we needed to balance his old reasoning behind why he wants to use it, and also allow new ideas to come into the situation without anyone getting offended or without anyone shouting at each other or fighting. So what I would do in this kind of situation is first of all give everyone a chance to speak and make sure that as a team we set the culture of the team is to allow everyone to speak and to be safe in sharing their ideas. So that was step one. Obviously, when I first had the idea, or when we first had the new feature requested from us, it obviously blew up as an initial conversation, right? It didn't go as planned the first time, which is normal. And then the second time, I took a step back and said, "Hey, in our team, we allow everyone to speak openly." I spoke to the team about this and said, "Hey, guys, listen, everyone needs to have an opportunity to speak about this. This is not an emotional discussion. We're just talking purely about the solution here. Let's move. We'll address the emotional aspect first." So I spoke to the senior engineer and said, "Hey, I understand where you're coming from. We've been in those situations before, but as a team, we need to look at what we can do for the future of the product, right?" And then that way, we allowed everyone to have a good discussion. And what we ended up having was kind of a hybrid solution where we reused a lot of the stuff from the old guy, from the older engineer, and we ported that to the new solution. So he still felt included because when I spoke to him, his fear was he would be replaced in the company. Right, that was his underlying fear.
Mhm.
Was I'm scared that if I let
Yeah.
go of this solution, I'm going to be redundant, and that was one of the things that was the main fear factor behind him showing that emotional and aggressive approach to the conversation. So once we'd addressed that as a team and made sure that everyone was aboard and we all took a step together in the right direction, then we had, I think, a much better solution at the end of the day, and all the team members were happy. So I felt that was a really important point in the product for us. Yeah.
Well, awesome, awesome example. I mean, yes, we often I have done that in from a position of a senior developer in on a project, which at the point I felt okay, that was my baby. I born that, and I made everything in there. Why do we need to change it? And yes, if we don't handle our emotions, our fears, our and communicate that with the team what we do after that, why it's better to implement another system or change the programming language or technology on that. We don't see, we're blind, right? We're on our own track, our own mind. So yes,
Yeah.
yes, great example. Yeah.
No,
So
thanks.
other, I don't know, how do you handle team dynamics, other communication challenges or conflicts within your projects or people in the company?
Yeah, so I think what I always like to do, and I mentioned this earlier, is I really address engineering culture as a not just something that exists, but something that we all contribute to, right? So I think at the end of
Mm,
the day, I like to make sure that the team is aware of what we consider a positive and good culture inside of the organization, and I think that really helps steer many aspects of communication, for instance. So a lot of the time, like we saw, there was an aggressive approach to the senior engineer had an aggressive approach to the new engineers, and at the end of the day, that's not what we allow inside of our team as an engineering culture. And I think that the culture, as you mentioned earlier, it's not about the rules that you write on the wall, right? It's about what you allow inside of the team. So you can say whatever you want and put it on a big nice printout in your office and say these are the rules or this is the culture. But if no one follows it, then it's not the culture, right? That's absolutely not the case. So
yes.
the engineering culture is what we allow inside of the team. It's not what we say we allow. So in that way, I make sure that whenever we're talking about communication, whenever we're talking about new solutions, I make sure that it's framed around what we allow as a culture inside of that team. And if someone steps out of those bounds, I'm not afraid to say, hey, either in the meeting or pull them aside later and say, hey, I noticed this behavior. It's not something that we allow on the team, and these are the reasons why. And then a lot of the time, I'll even ask, why did you feel like that, and try and understand them from their perspective. Because I don't believe that people come into the office to try and destroy everything. Everyone comes into the office every single day to try and do good for the company, right? No one walks in with the idea that, oh, I'm going to set the whole place on fire. Maybe there are some people who are disgruntled, but generally people who, yeah, generally people who work in the company, they want to do the right thing. So everyone, as what I do
Yes.
for conversations is say, hey, look, we're all here to try and improve and do the right thing. Let's start off with that point. Let's trust each other enough to know that we're all here to try and do the best that we can. And once you set that precedent, I find a lot of things move a lot more smooth with inside of your team.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously. And reflecting on your career, I don't. Did you had significant mentorship experiences back in the days? Someone that impacted you, your professional journey?
Oh, wow, I'm just trying to think if there was someone that was. I think for me, I never really had a specific mentor per se, like someone who was actually uh, like designated to mentor me. I think what I try and do is I look at everyone has something to offer. So I kind of see everyone as a mentor. I see that a lot of someone is doing something well. I see, oh wow, they're doing that really well. Maybe I can look at them and try and understand them. Maybe ask them some questions. So I kind of see everyone that I work with as a mentor in some way, and they may have something to teach me that I don't already know. So I don't know if I ever really had a specific mentor, but whenever I'm working with some new people or a new company, I just try and understand what they're doing well, and what can I do to improve if I'm not doing well in that situation. So a lot of the time, it's whenever I join a new company. A lot of the time, there's always the like what they want to call like a rock star engineer. Normally, a company has a really powerful, a strong engineer, for instance, who delivers a lot. And I always try and look at what they do, look at their code, for instance, and just maybe it's not a designated mentor, but they definitely influenced me along the way.
Yes, yes. And if you were to mentor someone, and I guess you already had that, um, what advice would you prioritize in your guidance for them?
Yeah, I think what's important to note when you're mentoring someone or if you're in a leadership position is it's not about you, right? So a lot of people, when they become a leader, they think, oh, it's about me. I'm number one. But I actually look at it the other perspective. It's my responsibility to make sure that the team is number one and the team's winning. So from that perspective, I always make sure
Mhm.
that it's not about me. It's about the person that I'm mentoring. And I always just try. My goal with everyone is to try and help them. So the same way that people have helped me along the way and given me advice in certain ways, I just make sure that I'm that person for anyone that I'm mentoring. So if it's around a programming language, or if it's around design principles, or if it's around leadership itself, I just say, hey, these are my experiences. This is what I learned in the situation. How can I help you move to the next step? Or what can I do to help you in that way? So it's more about just about helping the person in the way that they need, right? A lot of the times what people do when they mentor, when they try and lead, is they try and do it their way. And not everyone, feedback, for instance, is a really good example, right? There's many different ways. Some people like direct feedback, some people like indirect feedback. That is determined on what country you come from or what region of the world, right? So in Asia, indirect feedback is much better than direct feedback, but in the Netherlands, for instance, where I am, direct feedback is actually much better. And you should never give feedback or mentor someone in the way that you need to be mentored. You need to look at it from their perspective. How do they need to be helped? Not about how do I think that they need to be helped. And I think that that's really important when you're mentoring someone, is you make it about them. You don't make it about yourself at all.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome, awesome view, because we often are caught in our values, our mindset, and we think that everyone beside us or near us should behave the same. But it's almost never the case, because everyone
Exactly.
has
Yeah,
their own set of values and past and experiences and guidance in life, and we need to speak on their language. We need to discuss on the same level as them, even that we are sharing our knowledge, right? But asking first to understand, and after that, giving the guidance in the coaching manner. It's something that help anyone perceive that they are first listened, and after that they are pushing information on their behavior, or
yeah,
to say.
absolutely, absolutely.
Um, yes. Besides um, mentors, did you felt like you had support networks in your career, especially when there were challenges and you had difficult times?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, I mean, we spoke about a mentor, and when I worked at one of these, one of the companies in South Africa that I was consulting at, on like the third day, I even mentioned this in my latest talk about truncating a production database, right? And that was something where I was only in the industry for about four years or something like that, and that I
Oh,
literally sat at my computer, I went white, and I was like, what have I just done? And actually, the senior engineer at the time, he came up to me, just put his arm around me, and said, "Look, this happens to everyone. It's not that big of a deal. We have backups. It'll take us a couple hours, but we'll get it back up and running. It's really not the end of the world." And that moment really made me feel like I have a team that can help me achieve. And I think that that's really important, right? It's mistakes happen, and everyone makes mistakes. It's not new. No one's perfect. And having someone say, "Hey, no one's perfect. We've all done it," really made me feel like I was part of a team and I felt like I was supported. So I think that was probably one of the biggest moments for me about being supported. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, awesome. So if you go and from your entire experience, if you were to build a new team, what qualities would you look for to foster and grow a supportive and collaborative work environment?
Yeah, so I think currently now I do quite a bit of recruiting for my current team at my client, and what I normally look for is I don't really test like how do you say, I test for things like how do I put this into words? Basically, I don't test for the technical skills per se. I'll ask them to write some kind of code for me, and I'll ask them questions around that. And what I do in those questions is normally I challenge them. So I'll put them in a situation where they're challenged, like someone's going against what they're saying, for instance. See how they respond to that. So their ability to handle criticism, for instance, or to handle suggestions. Then I'll ask them to make suggestions on what they think that could have been done better. So I'm asking them to how do they contribute back towards the team. So I'm looking for more soft skills than hard skills in that way. And the soft skills that I'm really looking for are the ones that contribute to our engineering culture and what I consider a good engineering culture. So that's what I would look for. Is not I think anyone who's been around as a programmer for 5, 10 years, you can almost write any language and you can switch between any pro. That's not the deterministic factor for me at all. I think it's more around you
Hmm.
as a person. How do you behave in a team? Are you the guy that's going to scream over everyone else? What happens if I challenge you? Are you going to get upset with me and push back towards me and fight me, for instance, and start getting a bit angry, which is not obviously what I'm not looking for inside of a team member. And then, yeah, how would you work with other people, for instance? So collaboration for me is a huge part of being a team. I'm a big fan of yeah, TDD, but also extreme programming and pair programming specifically. I think those are amazing tools to deliver quality software. And in order to facilitate and work in those kind of ways, you need to have a certain personality that allows for collaboration. So I really look for those kind of things: collaboration, how you handle feedback, how you give feedback, and those are the main things that I would look for. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. So did you say here? It's very important their personality, the human skills they have, how they approach problems, how they approach failure, how they approach communication with others. So yes, this is what I'm also preaching and going into, and do workshops with teams, because many people don't get this from school, right? Don't get this from universities. They don't use to work together as a team. They have worked a lot of individual stuff. So it's important to grow the team and build the skills, those skills in them. Right, right.
Yep,
Uh,
absolutely.
a funny, yes, a funny question for you. If if you could have dinner with any figure from the tech industry, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Well, that's a good question. Also a really hard question because there's a lot of people that you would want to see. Um, Let me go with someone that's relevant at the moment, and it might be slightly controversial, but I would like to have dinner with Elon Musk, mainly because yeah, I might not necessarily like him as a person per se. I'm not saying I don't like him. I don't know if I agree with him on everything, but I think the innovation that he's brought to the front in the last 10 years, maybe he wasn't the one that designed all of it, but he's been the figurehead that's led to a lot of things like electric cars, space program again, many different things that are helping push technology further. And I think just trying to speak to him about what his motivation is behind that would really help inspire me to be more motivated, because I also really care about or tech transformation in general. So I think they would align with me.
Mm, yeah, yeah, and I also think that Elon is the crazy innovator from our industry right now, and it has those skills. Although he's not very good with people, and I I can say that, and it's something that maybe he didn't want it to grow, but in the innovation space, he's very very good and an example for all of us. All right. So on the same note, there is a book or other resources that helped you or grow in your career.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the ones that helped me a lot about writing software specifically was one called The Programmer's Brain. Um, I have it here, written by The Programmer's Brain. Yeah, it's this one. This one here, the programmer's brain. What it
Hmm.
did basically was dissect, because a lot of the time people write software for the compiler, right? So you write a lot of people when you first start writing code, you think, oh, I want to write the most optimized, the best, most fine-grained, powerful, performant algorithm that I could write. And then you come back 3 months later and you look at the code and you're like, what did I write? What is this even? It takes you like 3 hours to understand it, what it is that you wrote. And this book really dissects code in your brain at a level where it speaks about the different types of memory you have in your brain, like short-term and long-term memory, for instance. And this really gave me a perspective about guiding teams about writing the right kind of software. So you can have two functions that do things the exact same way, but one's written in a way that's written highly performatic for the compiler, and one that's written for human readable. And I would always steer towards the one that's human readable, because as a programmer, they say you read about 70% of your time is about reading code and 30% is about writing code. So you really should write code for that
Right.
70%. So that was a real big influence, I think, on me as a programmer in the tech space. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Great, great resource. Thank you for
Cool.
sharing. As we prepare for, I don't know, for ending, well, could you give me your final thoughts for the podcast? Is there a particular piece of advice or insight you would like to leave with the audience?
Yeah, so for me, I think the biggest change in my life was giving people the benefit of the doubt. So what I said earlier is that no one comes into the office to try and set everything on fire, right? Everyone wants to try and do the right thing. And I think if everyone adopted that mindset going into conversations, we'd have a lot less friction, and we'd have a lot more productive conversations. So the thing that I would say to everyone listening is give people the benefit of the doubt before you criticize them or their ideas. Try and understand where they're coming from first, then make your decision. Don't have any preconceived ideas about them. Just really give them the opportunity to speak and share their ideas, and really take those at their value. Don't just assume or criticize before they've even had a chance to finish. Just let people speak and understand where they're coming from. I think that could change the world, to be honest.
Wow, awesome, awesome. If you want to provide information on how audience and listeners can connect with you after the podcast, any social media profiles, websites, or your platforms, would you like to share?
Yeah, sure. I can share. Must I share on here, or will I send you a link, or how we do that?
No, you can say here. I don't know to remain in the
Yeah,
recording.
sure. So I have this is my lead community IO. This is my platform about leadership. So I'm there. I have my videos there. We have a lot of blog posts about leadership. This stands for Leaders in Engineering, Architecture, and Development. So that's the acronym. Therefore, that's probably the biggest platform that I'm active on at the moment.
Thank you very much, Jethro. It was a pleasant discussion. I'm very glad you accepted my invitation. I hope that you felt good during our call, and yeah, thank you
Yeah, thank
very
you, Dan.
much.
Thank you for having me on the podcast. This is something that I'm very passionate about, and I love speaking about it. So thank you for giving me the platform to talk about it, and I really enjoyed our talk together. So I hope that I wish you good luck with your podcast in the future, and I hope everything goes well.
Sure, sure. And for the audience, and that was a wrap for today's episode of the Vibe It Up. I hope you enjoyed our insightful conversation with Jethro Sloan. And before we go, I want to extend again a big thank you to our guest for sharing his valuable experience and perspective. If you, our listeners, have been inspired or have burning questions after this episode, I encourage you to connect with us. You can find more about the Vibe It Up on your YouTube, LinkedIn, or Discord channels. Soon, I didn't launch the Discord channel yet, but it will be soon for the community. There you'll discover additional resources like books, episode transcripts, other short materials, and so on. And for real time updates, we have also LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, where you can have a sneak peek on on our show. If you have suggestions for the future episodes, topics you would like to explore, or if you want to be a guest on the show, feel free to reach out. Your input is what keeps the Vibe It Up community thriving. So, a big thank you to our audience again for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform.